Wentz will survey from the gun. Wipes his hands on the white towel off his belt. He's at his own 27 with a 3rd and 8. Flanked by a back. Shotgun snap is belt high. Drops back 3. Pocket crumbles. He'll go down. No, he escapes. He runs out of no place. The 30, the 40. Up the middle he goes. Running along the hash mark. He sprints to the 44. He is Houdini. 17-yard run. How did he get free? Squirming free for a first down run for Philadelphia.
Whenever you can get Houdini in the broadcast, it's always a good day. The Wentz wagon back to full capacity after the Eagles' big win over their division rival and, of course, leading Philly to the best record in football. Hey, welcome to SI Now. Maggie and Robin with you on a Tuesday. Wentz threw for 4 touchdowns and a pick. He racked up over 300 yards, Robin. Is he the second best quarterback in the NFL after Senior Tom Brady?
Well, calm down a little bit here. Look, I'm not the Cleveland Browns when it comes to evaluating Carson Wentz. They said he wasn't going to be a top 20 quarterback in the NFL. He's obviously been impressive. But when it comes to these sort of conversations, and of course we're excluding Aaron Rodgers due to injury, some guys have a little bit of a track record where I'm not ready to just dismiss them. Russell Wilson, for one, Super Bowl. Cam Newton's been to one. Alex Smith, we were just talking about him as the MVP a couple of weeks ago. And I'll even go this far. Are we sure that Carson Wentz is the best second-year quarterback in the NFC East? I mean, Dak Prescott and Wentz is a conversation to me.
It is a conversation. I do not think that Wentz is the second best quarterback in the NFL, even though he looks great. And that is because I take my test of who would you want to win a game. And, of course, you got to put Brady there. I would put Alex Smith there. I think that Drew Brees is still there. And I think that Ben Roethlisberger, quite frankly, is still there. Because of the track record that you said, I would take all of those quarterbacks before I would go with Carson Wentz. And honestly, we kind of saw this with the Eagles a little bit last year when Wentz got off to this gangbuster start. And then down the stretch of the season, not only did they lose 5 games in a row at one point, which was basically the end of the season for them, or spelled doom for them. He then threw 7 picks in the second half of the year, where he'd only thrown 3 in the first half of the year. So there is going to be, I think, a little bit of maybe return to the mean, if you will, although we're not sure what exactly that mean is. But it's hard to nitpick on Carson Wentz just because even though he might not be the second best, well, I do think he's a lot better than Dak Prescott, actually. I think he's shown the most improvement from year 1 to year 2 than any quarterback really in a long, long time.
Well, they should definitely feel good about him. I like the way he uses his legs at times. I mean, the Eagles overall are good. So I'm not hating. Shouts to Philly. I mean, the Sixers finally get a win. You got Carson Wentz and the Eagles rolling. But speaking of quarterbacks, the Cardinals' Bruce Arians is the latest coach to be asked about possibly bringing in Colin Kaepernick. Arians' response was that they really like Blaine Gabbert and haven't had more than 2 quarterbacks on the roster since he's been there. The problem? It isn't true, as the Cardinals have almost always rostered 3 QBs under Arians. Are you still surprised how far Arians and others will go to explain away not bringing in Kaepernick?
No. I mean, I interviewed Bruce Arians this summer. He was on a book tour. He said, they had just signed Blaine Gabbert. And he said, no, I'm not going to bring in Colin Kaepernick to be a backup because it's not worth the distraction. But you're right. I mean, it's going pretty far to when you can just say, hey, we don't want him. You don't have to start making things up because then you have to go back and look at some of the depth charts and you'll see names like Logan Thomas and like Matt Barkley and like Zach Dysert and Ryan Lindley. And that doesn't bode well for Arians because all of those guys were 3rd guys on the roster at quarterback and none of them are even anywhere near the same category as Colin Kaepernick. So if I'm Arians, I'm not trying to lie and I'm not trying to make up excuses. I'm going to say what he said to me, which was, we don't want to bring him in because he's a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this situation now, it's almost not worth having the conversation because now that the suit was brought from Kaepernick, the collusion suit, he's not going to help his relations with the league at all. But the reason that was brought is his camp must have finally got to the point of no return because we've well been past the point of it being rational to explain it away. So unfortunately, he's not going to get a job. None of these teams are going to sign Colin Kaepernick, even though he clearly deserves to be on a roster. And beyond that, he clearly deserves to be starting in the NFL right now.
Well, it's also just bad and worse for the Cardinals. I mean, the last thing they need is any kind of negative attention this way when they just lost Carson Palmer. Adrian Peterson's follow-up from his debut in a Cardinals uniform was not good. And it looks like now they should basically be playing for next year, which I don't even know if Arians is going to be there next year.
To that, is it necessarily going to be negative attention? I mean, couldn't there be some positive ripple effects? next for the team that does?
No, I think he's going to get asked about it a lot, and I think that he's going to have to be forced to defend it. That's what I meant by negative. Meanwhile, FIFA, usually negative, handing out their World Player of the Year awards for both the men and the women. Robin, if we know anything about FIFA, they couldn't avoid controversy if they tried. And according to Megan Rapinoe, they definitely did not try to avoid the latest debacle. The short list for the men's award included names you may have heard of: Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar. While the women's shortlist included, of course, Carly Lloyd and Lieke Martens from the Netherlands, and Dana Castellanos, who is an amateur who plays at Florida State, but also for the Venezuelan national team and in United Women's Soccer, which is a second-tier soccer league in the United States. So Megan Rapinoe didn't like that an amateur was included on the shortlist. She said this in an interview with the BBC. She said the award just doesn't hold a lot of weight when you've got someone on the list I've never heard of. It signals to us and it signals to the rest of the world that FIFA doesn't really care. If some random male player who was not even a full professional was nominated, I'm sure they would step in for that. So it's disappointing the same hasn't been done for us. Rapinoe also called FIFA, quote, old, male, and stale. Robin, what is more disrespectful is that FIFA did this and put an amateur on the short list, or that Megan Rapinoe called this woman out?
The latter. I like Megan Rapinoe, but this isn't cool at all. I mean, you're talking about someone who's trying to rise to that level, someone who has achieved a lot and did nothing to put her name into this conversation. It's incredibly dismissive of what she's done. And if I'm FIFA, my defense is we care enough that we're looking into the amateur ranks to identify the upcoming talent. But that's not my point here. I'm not in any way defending FIFA or saying Rapinoe's overall point isn't correct. But this isn't the way to get that point across, because the only thing she winds up doing is disparaging someone who doesn't deserve to be in this conversation in the first place.
You know, we should be clear that this award is not just determined by FIFA. They take into account coaches and a lot of other players and other people who their opinions go into deciding who wins this award. And I think, unfortunately for Dana Castellanos, she was almost collateral damage in the bigger issue that Megan Rapinoe is trying to bring to light, which is it feels worse to be neglected, and to her, it shows that they are not taking this award very seriously, right? And so I think that, well, Rapinoe, and I can't speak for her, but I think what she's trying to do is saying, look, U.S. men's national team is not playing in the World Cup. We are the reigning World Cup champions. If I want to use my platform, if I want to bring attention, it's sort of our time now. And you can't be having someone who, if Megan Rapinoe's never heard of her, I mean, that's a little bit, that goes to show she's pretty down on the depth chart, so to speak. You couldn't find anyone else who would be on the short list, and I think she's totally right. If this happened to the men, there'd be an uproar.
But if you're Castellano, you go from, wow, this is really cool, I'm being honored, to being slandered, essentially, by Megan Rapinoe, who you may look up to. So I don't think it's a good look.
Like I said, collateral damage.
It is that time of the week, though, when you are expected to look at your fantasy football waiver wire, perhaps due to collateral damage to your roster. Here's Corey Parson, the fantasy exec, with who to pick up.
Hey, it's Corey Parson, the fantasy executive, with your SI Now Fantasy Football Waiver Wire report for week number 8. We got 6 teams on bye this week, so we may have to dig a little bit deeper to find some fantasy football assets. If you're having issues at quarterback, look to add Bills' Tyrod Taylor. Taylor may not be a season savior, but he already has had his bye, and matchups versus the Raiders, Colts, Jets, and 2 games versus the Patriots left on his schedule. Taylor doesn't have the most passing upside, but he'll give you about 40 yards a week as a rusher. Jalen Richard. With Marshawn Lynch suspended for week number 8, Richard could be a nice pickup for this week and for the rest of the season. Richard will split time with back DeAndre Washington, but like I always say, roster the pass-catching running back. Speaking of pass-catching running backs, Theo Riddick is on the waiver wire in the majority of leagues. Riddick hasn't really been a part of the Lions' offense so far this season, but with Golden Tate likely on the shelf for the next month, Riddick will get more targets in the passing game. He is the perfect add for owners in PPR formats. Dolphins wide receiver Kenny Stills has been on the field for over 90% of the Dolphins' snaps on offense. With Jay Cutler injured, the Dolphins' passing game could look better the next few weeks. Even if Devontae Parker returns from ankle injury, look for Stills to continue to put up numbers to be startable as fantasy owners deal with bye-week hell. Owners who need wide receiver help in deeper leagues may want to take a flyer on Travis Benjamin in Week 8. Benjamin may not see many snaps or targets, but in Week 8, with 6 teams on bye and Benjamin and the Chargers going up against the New England Patriots secondary, Benjamin could easily eat in week number 8. That's your week 8 waiver wire report. For SI Now, I'm Corey Parson, the fantasy executive.
Let's talk some NBA, shall we? Jared Zwerling, our NBA insider, is here. And Jared, despite winning their very first game, the Suns are looking as dysfunctional as ever. Of course, they parted ways with their coach, Earl Watson, after just 3 games. Now Jay Triano, the former Toronto Raptors head coach, is going to be taken over. Is this the long-term option for Phoenix, or is this just a stopgap?
I think it's long term. I talked to a source very close to Jay Triano. He said he's going to be there for the long haul.
Okay.
That's the focus, I think. You know, it's his job to lose. That was his quote. So I think he's there. Jay is a really very well-respected coach. Overseas, had a great job with the Eurocamp in Treviso. Did a great job developing young talent. He was actually a coach out there for a very long time. So very well-respected. You have Dragon Bender in Phoenix. And just an overall great guy. He's a basketball guy. He watches a lot of film. He's very in-depth with the guys. He's a lot more experienced than Earl Watson, which is obviously very important. So, look, it's the 4 games into the season. You can't make a very big move and get a brand new coach in there. So I think Jay's the guy right now.
Of course, the drama surrounding Eric Bledsoe really now falls on the front office. Bledsoe sent out this tweet. You may have heard of it. And then he tried to cover up his tracks. So here was Suns GM Ryan McDonough addressing the tweet.
Well, we just met with Eric this morning. I met with him before shoot-around. Coach Triano and I met with him. You guys saw his tweet last night. I gave him a call last night and asked him about that tweet and, just to clarify what he meant by it. And he said he was at a hair salon. It wasn't about the Suns or anything related to the Suns. He said he was at a hair salon with this girl and he didn't want to be there anymore. So I don't believe that to be true. So we thought about it, talked about it with Robert and my staff and Coach Triano and his staff and decided it's what's best for the organization. So he won't be with us, going forward.
One of the great lines in GM press conference, I do not believe that to be true. I'm totally stealing that from Ryan McDonough. Okay, but we know that Bledsoe obviously was sent home. He's clearly not going to be with the team now. So let's talk some NBA trade scenarios. One of our favorite segments, Hoopatheticals, is back. We couldn't be happier. I'm going to set up some potential trades for you guys, and you tell me whether you like it, you don't like it, or whether this could actually happen. And let's start with the Milwaukee Bucks. What do you think about potentially Greg Monroe and his expiring contract, DJ Wilson, and a first-round pick for Eric Bledsoe?
If I'm the Bucks, I think great. Sign me up. Let's go through, put this trade, process it. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm now maybe the second best team in the Eastern Conference. If I'm the Suns, I go, not so fast. Let me think this over at the hair salon before I get back to you.
That's going to be hours at the hair salon. Boy, don't I know it. What do you think?
I think go for it. It's a point guards league. You need Bledsoe, a guy off the bench. Jason Terry, older player. I think you go with Bledsoe. Now, look, it's a potential first-round pick. Milwaukee is a smaller market. You have to build through the draft. Giannis looks fantastic, obviously, almost 40 points per game right now, MVP candidate. So he might attract free agents. But those first-round picks are very hard to let go of. So I think it's a 50-50, but I would say go get Bledsoe, get Young off the bench. Let's go. Let's rock.
Okay. What about the Cavaliers, who's basically the best team in the Eastern Conference? What about a potential Isaiah Thomas returns to Phoenix, the scene of the crime, if you will? They already traded him away, and Channing Frye for Eric Bledsoe. Jared, what do you think?
Man, they're so guard heavy, and I think Isaiah Thomas, you have to wait and see what this guy's going to do. Obviously All-Star does so many things for your team, the heart and soul of obviously the team, that great energy, that great passion. So you got to wait a little bit. They're so guard heavy. You don't need to make that rush move right now. A few games in, Dwyane Wade now off the bench, which I think is a great move. Gives him a second playmaker, really facilitate that second unit. So I think ride it out. I don't think you need Bledsoe right now. Just Derrick Rose is obviously playing pretty good, and only a few games into the season. So
if the Cavs had a combination of Eric Bledsoe and Isaiah Thomas, they might be right there with the Warriors. The problem is, as Jared said, you haven't seen Isaiah Thomas on the Cavs yet. But if that hip injury is going to linger, there aren't many backcourt players like Bledsoe who can D up the way he can. I mean, I'd have to really think about this one. I doubt it happens because of the circumstances around Isaiah Thomas, because if you bring Bledsoe in, you're stuck with a problem with no shooting in the backcourt. Meanwhile, if Thomas comes, that's not your problem, but defense in the backcourt is.
It's really hard to trade an injured player. We know that, and Isaiah Thomas, we're thinking about his hip, although I think that the Suns would be more likely to give him a long-term contract because they're looking for an identity than perhaps the Cavs would. And, of course, that's Isaiah's big goal moving forward, as it should be. Let's talk about the New York Knicks. Boy, things couldn't get worse, so let's maybe give him a trade. How about this? Frank Ntilikina, and Lance Thomas, and the Knicks get Eric Bledsoe.
This is similar to the Isaiah Thomas situation where we haven't seen Frank play for the Knicks as of yet, but if you're asking me today, I have to decide on this trade, I would make it if I'm the Knicks. The Knicks are in a situation where they really have no way to acquire talent because the draft pick this year is going to be huge for them, but they don't have much talent on the roster to flip in a trade, and Bledsoe is about as good as I think they could possibly do. He would also address some defensive issues they have. They may be the worst defensive team in the NBA, so today I make that trade.
I agree. I watched 2 games this year with the Knicks, and they're really struggling getting the ball into the paint, making plays, facilitating. Tim Hardaway Jr. is more of an off-the-ball type player, so they need him more off-screen action. So you need a guy that really going to get in the paint, really drive the defense in and kick out. So I say go for Bledsoe. Frank's a great talent, really intriguing guy, but that's a few weeks, a few months from now. He's obviously dealing with the injury, like you said, Robin. So I think you go with Bledsoe. They need some talent in New York, right? I mean, obviously losing Melo, you got to get some star power. Bledsoe's a 20-point-a-game scorer. That's very needed in New York right now.
Yeah, besides Porzingis. Right. He's got some talent. Let's keep moving on. The Nuggets. What about Wilson Chandler and Emmanuel Mudiay for Bledsoe? Who says no, Jared?
I'm saying go with Bledsoe. I think you look at Gary Harris. This team has a lot of guards, but Mudiay, not a great passer. Wilson Chandler, he's been there for a while. He's a great veteran player there, but they need some more firepower, I think, in Denver, especially how they're running right now. Denver is one of the most exciting teams in the league. Jokic, triple-double threat. It's exciting what they're doing there. So I think you go with Bledsoe. I think he's going to add a lot of punch in that system. Teams now need to score over 115 points again, really to contend with the Warriors, even the Rockets. So Bledsoe gives you, like I said, 20 points a game. Go for it. I think it's going to be a great asset, especially in the Western Conference with how competitive it is.
Wilson Chandler's a nice player, but he's not exactly at the beginning of his career anymore. I make this trade in a second if I'm the Nuggets. Mudiay looks a little bit like damaged goods, and he's still searching for a jump shot. If you're going to assess one weakness in Bledsoe's game, it's that. So it's not like you would be trading away a strength for a weakness. You'd just be getting the better overall player. If I'm Denver, I make that move as soon as I can.
Yeah, and I think some new front office blood in Denver, so we'll see if they're into making some big moves, aside from bringing, of course, Paul Millsap over from the Atlanta Hawks. Okay, let's keep moving with some hypotheticals. How about the Charlotte Hornets? What would Mike and his airness do? Would he trade Malik Monk and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist for Bledsoe? Who says no?
I think this is a great move. You have Kemba Walker from the starting 5, and imagine Bledsoe off the bench. What a fiery 1-2 punch from the first unit to the second unit. Malik Monk, Dwayne Bacon. Dwayne Bacon looks actually pretty good so far, averaging around 10 points or so. He looks great, great mid-range shooter. So, but again, those Malik Monk and Dwayne are rookies, and Bledsoe gives you that firepower, I think, off the bench. It's important to have that, especially in just a system of approach from first to second unit. You want that balance to carry over. So the Hornets definitely need somebody like that.
There are trends in the NBA. One of them is almost every team now, which is the stretch 4, right? Sure. The big man shooting the ball, almost like a tall wing player. The other is playing 2 ball handlers together, 2 guys that can create. And I'm not so sure you couldn't play Kemba Walker and Bledsoe together. Maybe you'd be a bit undersized, but they had success with Jeremy Lin when he was in Charlotte doing the same thing. I think much like the Knicks, the Hornets are in a situation where they don't have that many avenues to acquire talent. This would be a trade I would make for them. For sure.
Okay, so of all these, give me a quick answer. Which one do you think is actually the best? Hypothetical.
Give me the Bucks. I want to see Giannis with Bledsoe.
Definitely. Giannis is the MVP candidate right now. How exciting would that be? The Bucks need a little bit more scoring to help Giannis. Chris Middleton's back. Jabari Parker's back. So they have a nice little up front 3 guys. But Bledsoe, man, he would be a big help there.
We did mention the Cavs, of course. Tonight, Dwyane Wade will be coming off the bench for Cleveland just a few games into the season. Now, Ty Lue said that Wade came to him and said that he should be coming off the bench. Is that actually what happened, Jared? Did Wade make the call?
I definitely think so. LeBron and Wade are best friends. You don't come to Cleveland and come off the bench. These guys have a history together. They won 2 championships together. So, Wade is the legacy guy. He's a Hall of Famer. Started basically his entire career, right? Only 11 games off the bench. So the system is in place for him to come off the bench. J.R. Smith's comments, I think, irked a little bit of what's going on there, maybe some of the chemistry. I think that conversation led to more conversations. Now, look, at the end of the day, it actually helps the Cavs. They need that second guy off the bench who really could be that playmaker. Right now, Isaiah Thomas is out. Derrick Rose in the starting 5. off the bench, there's not really a guy that can really facilitate offense. So imagine now LeBron really setting the tone in the first unit, really, and now Wade, who's a great playmaker in the second unit. Not only Wade is a great playmaker, but he's really good off the ball. He can really create a lot of smart IQ plays, and that's what the second unit needs. Now, also, the matchups against second units. He has a lot more experience, so he can really dominate and take advantage of those second unit opportunities. So I think it's great, just offensively and defensively, it just makes sense.
Regardless of how it happened, it makes everyone look good here because it makes Wade look like he was able to see, okay, I can get past my ego and I can get into a role. Plus, the Cavs could not pair Rose and Wade long term. Now, when you are thinking long term, one of those two guys is going to be marginalized. If Isaiah Thomas comes back healthy, that will be a story to watch after, say, January. Which of those guys is basically out of the rotation? Will it be Derrick Rose or Dwyane Wade?
Also, can we see past this a little bit? Isn't it not who starts the game, it's who finishes? I mean, I really think you're going to see Dwyane Wade on the floor in crunch time in a fourth quarter more than you're going to see Derrick Rose. And then we'll see what happens when Isaiah Thomas comes back. But I think Wade, with 3 titles, basically realizes, all right, if I'm on the floor in the fourth quarter, that means a lot more than having my name be in the opening introductions, you know, with all the pyrotechnics going off.
Yeah, and also Wade can post up too in certain lineups, and that really creates a lot of soaking into the defense. He can kick out. He's a great passer. So, you know, Wade is a strong guard at 6'4", 220. So he gives you a lot of issues where you just can't be able to match up with it. And he's gotten much better in the paint in the last few years, you know, really with those creative floaters and finishes. So, you know, look, at the end of the day, you want to suck in the defense, get those kickouts, and the Cavs are going to have a lot of great passers, especially in Isaiah in those fourth quarter lineups too. So the ball's going to be moving. They have a lot of veteran experience. It's a very high IQ team, so I'm excited about the opportunities, I'll say.
Man, if you thought we were going to get through one of these shows without talking about Lonzo Ball, you were dead wrong, because the Lakers host the 3-0 Washington Wizards Wednesday, and Wiz center Marcin Gortat, the latest to weigh in on the dynamic between LeVar Ball and Lonzo. You can see the tweets there, where he says John Wall's going to torture him for 48 minutes. And then he said the pressure the man puts on Lonzo is unbelievable. Gortat responds he will kill his son one day. Let's not be too literal here. Obviously, English, Gortat's second language. He's from Poland. But what do you think is more likely to happen? Is that John Wall tortures Lonzo Ball for 48 minutes, or that LeVar is going to be the one who brings down his son?
Did you see the tweets from fans? I cannot stand LeVar. Get him off the air. You know, ESPN, all these outlets. So a lot of it's just fueled through LeVar. They have a Facebook deal, you know, reality show,
Sure.
all this stuff. So
They were renewed for a second season.
And you know, Lonzo, I've got a chance to know him. I actually saw his agent Harrison Gaines last week in LA. We really talked about Lonzo and some of his interests. Lonzo is all basketball. He's not only with the Lakers, but his 2 brothers, really developing their talent in Chino Hills on their backyard court. Right now, really outside making music, he's actually turning down deals. He's very focused on really just a few signing appearances. The guy is so focused on basketball. And maybe what irks fans too, or maybe the league, is just when he's in interviews, he has a lot of swag. He's got that like very confident demeanor. Doesn't say a lot. You know, which is really rare for a rookie coming in, because into the Lakers situation, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of hoopla. Jack Nicholson sitting courtside. It's entertainment. It's Hollywood. The guy is so focused, so he hasn't really said anything. This is all fueled really through his father. So Lonzo, great second performance after his dismal first start. So the kid's going to be a special player. You know, Jason Kidd with more athleticism. He's going to be a stud. I'm really excited about his future.
You think he's more athletic than Jason Kidd?
I do. Did you see that windmill dunk he had?
Yeah, I mean, but Jason Kidd, the way he would get to the rim, I mean, the athleticism's not just vertical leap. But aside from that point, it's a gift and a curse here, because LeVar Ball has made Lonzo into a bigger star. Look, he would have been drafted highly regardless of who his father was, but now he is on everybody's radar. If he is a special player, like you said, all this will benefit him, because he will have a higher profile for him to showcase his talent. The curse side of it is John Wall probably wasn't thinking about the Lakers on the schedule until Lonzo Ball wound up there.
I don't know. Patrick Beverley basically told him, welcome to the NBA. It's going to be like this for you now every single night. Granted, he did get that triple-double, neo-triple-double against the Phoenix Suns, who are in complete disarray. But I think that John Wall is going to be all over him, and it's just they're going to keep lining up, and it's going to be like.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Before the season, before Lonzo Ball was drafted, he probably wasn't thinking about the Lakers too much.
Yeah, right. No, because the Lakers won 26 games last year. No one was thinking about the Lakers.
By the way, these players like Gortat, they are making sense. I mean, Lonzo will struggle. I mean, it doesn't take some player for Lonzo to know that he is going to struggle. It's his rookie year.
Sure.
He has to bulk up maybe 10, 15 pounds. He has the toughest matchup every night. John Wall, Isaiah Thomas. You go down the list, it's the toughest matchup. So he doesn't need these players to fuel him. He knows what he's going to deal with on the court. I talked to also Harrison Gaines, the agent. Magic and Rob Pelinka are treating the Lakers like a kind of like a college program. two-a-day practices. They're intense on the court. They're going at it right now. So all this stuff will really help Lonzo, I think, develop. And he's going to see it every night, really in game action. So we'll see how he handles all of it.
Does that mean Luke Walton, Coach 4? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. NCAA
Big Baller
jokes.
brand wasn't one of the shoe brands named in that.
In that FBI's not on their case. Meanwhile, Jared Zwerling, our NBA insider, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Any real college football fan will tell you it's all about recruiting. That is why Amy Campbell is here. Today we're talking about Penn State. Amy, how's their 2018 class looking so far?
Maggie, they're hot right now, right? James Franklin has got them looking better than maybe they ever have. Number 4 class in the country, still behind Ohio State, who's sitting there at number 1. They've got 22 guys in this class. Could be one of their best classes in a very long time.
Offensively, Saquon Barkley and Deshaun Hamilton are the 2 names they're going to have to replace. How can they do it?
Well, a lot to, like you mentioned, a lot to replace there, but they've got some offensive studs coming in. We're going to start with a 5-star receiver out of South Brunswick High School in New Jersey, Justin Shorter, 6'4", 213, the number 3 wide receiver in the country, the number 12 prospect overall. He's been committed to Penn State for well over a year, so an absolute cornerstone for them. He's a guy who's going to be an absolute mismatch problem for defenses. You put him opposite Juwan Johnson, who's already at Penn State, they're going to be really tough to stop. And obviously they're losing Saquon Barkley, an elite guy. It's going to take a group to fill that void, we already know. But in 2016, they signed a stud in Miles Sanders. This year, it's Ricky Slade out of Virginia. He's a 4-star running back, number 2 all-purpose back. He is an incredibly versatile guy. A couple weeks ago, he had an 8-touchdown game, 5 touchdowns rushing, receiving, returning. He does it all. Great balance, great vision, super elusive. If this guy gets a crease, he's going to be gone.
Also, great name, Ricky Slade. You can see them calling that name out in Happy Valley when he surely reaches the end zone. Give me some other areas that Penn State still needs to fill, though.
Right. Well, like I said, not much room in this class with 22 guys. It's a very well-rounded class, but there are a couple of defensive ends that they're going after. They'd like to add a couple more in this class, and they can be a little bit picky about it, but there are some big names still on the board. We'll start with Tyreek Smith, a 4-star defensive end out of Cleveland, Ohio, 6'3", 260, relatively new to football, but very athletic. He's picked it up very quickly. He visited Penn State for the whiteout win over Michigan, a huge atmosphere there, but I mentioned he's from Ohio. Ohio State is all over this guy, and if he can get him, it could be his best recruiting victory yet. And then we got Jason Owe, another 4-star defensive end. This guy's from New Jersey, 6'5", 236, a little bit different player, long and lean, former hoops prospect. Like Smith, it's an Ohio State-Penn State Big Ten recruiting battle, both announcing at the Under Armour All-America game on January 4th. So we're going to be waiting a little bit to see where they go.
Okay, let's just look at a little history here. James Franklin, since he arrived in Happy Valley, has improved his record every single year. But Amy, how's he improved his recruiting classes?
Maggie, this man does not sleep. He is relentless on the recruiting trail, on Twitter when it comes to coaching. We knew he was a great recruiter from what he did at Vanderbilt. Now we're seeing he can coach as well. As you mentioned, they've improved on the field every year. When he was at Vanderbilt, his last year at Vanderbilt, signed a number 26 class in the nation. That does not happen at Vanderbilt. Twice in his 3 years at Vanderbilt, he out-recruited Penn State. Last season, they had their number 16 class. His first full year there, number 14, improving dramatically. Now they're sitting at number 4. It could be his best class ever and one of the Nittany Lions' best.
The way you said Vanderbilt, that should light a fire under those Commodores. Maybe we'll be talking about them sometime. In their recruiting, Amy Campbell.
They miss James Franklin.
They probably do. Appreciate it, Amy. Thank you.
Thanks.
The first ever Powering Precision Health Summit is happening right now in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Chris Borland is there. He was a third-round draft pick out of Wisconsin. He played one standout season for the San Francisco 49ers, making the NFL's all-rookie team before retiring out of fear of getting brain damage if he continued his NFL career. Chris Borland, good enough to join us now, and you're going to be speaking on a panel about the media's role in covering CTE and head trauma. So, Chris, what do you want the media, and then by extension the public, to know about this issue?
Well, I think awareness is really high, but high awareness doesn't exactly translate to acute awareness. And I think there's some simple things the media can do better, and it's beginning to do better in terms of semantics around the issue. I think instead of saying head injury, it's important in the moment to say brain injury or concussion. Also, I think when it's the print media sometimes conflates this as a concussion issue, when in reality, the research suggests that CTE is because of repetitive brain trauma. So there's little things like that, I think, that would progress the issue further. Again, I think it's going well. But those tweaks, I think, will heighten public awareness and make folks understand the gravity of the issue and perhaps a little bit more acute awareness of the science behind what's going on.
Speaking of that science, we know researchers at Boston University announced recently they have developed a preliminary method of diagnosing CTE in living patients. What level of football do you think would be most impacted by that news?
That's a great question. I think, if we evolve to a point where we had mandatory testing pre and post season, I think it'd be interesting to see the college level, particularly if kids are waiting more often. I know Pop Warner numbers are down. To see that transition at the college level where players aren't insured for incur during their college career and they aren't compensated. If we saw players developing a brain disease at institutions of higher learning, I think that would really change amateurism.
I think so too. What impact do you think that would have on the NFL?
It's hard to tell. I think there's informed consent, and also players are insured and being compensated. So that's another story. I don't think the NFL will ever suffer from a workforce population problem. There will always be people willing to play. However, it's a moral quandary for those who watch. If you're knowingly watching men develop a brain disease.
Okay, so speak to that. If you could say something to the fans, I know you've said it's hard for you to watch football because in some cases it's your friends out there who you feel like are getting injured. What's your message to the fans?
It's not my place to judge, and I understand participation and watching is just a matter of philosophy. So, I have a hard-earned apathy towards the issue, and I respectfully disagree with fans. I don't watch football. Maybe it gets to a place where I feel comfortable watching in the future, but to me, it's not worth it. And I don't have anything specific to say to fans. I just can share my opinion.
Do you find it interesting that with all the national anthem issues going on, that you'll have fans who will say they will boycott the NFL because they don't want to see a player take a knee, yet they won't boycott the NFL because the two players are running into each other, repeated head trauma, brain trauma?
Yeah, that's a head scratcher. I think people are really entrenched in their ideologies and react pretty fervently to a peaceful protest. So it doesn't make sense to me on either end of the spectrum. I think I'd be more apt to be uncomfortable with someone incurring brain damage than exercising their First Amendment.
We see Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. Well, he said a lot of things, but in 2016, he said it's, quote, absurd to think current data shows a link between CTE and football. If you could sit with Jerry Jones, what would you want to say to him?
Well, I'm afraid anything I would say would fall on deaf ears. There's really no engaging with a comment like that. I think he knows better, really. He's friends with a lot of former Cowboys that are dealing with struggles later in life. So I'd encourage him to be more empathetic toward the plight of former players, and maybe if he hasn't seen the research, point him in the direction of those who've conducted it, who are here today at the Powering Precision Health Conference.
Yeah, guys like Tony Dorsett, who used to play for the Cowboys, who is definitely struggling. It doesn't stop there. Our president has also said that football has become too soft. What's your reaction to those comments?
Wow, it's like we can't get through anything in America anymore without having to talk about Trump. I think there's some underlying issues there. I think he wanted to be an NFL owner and couldn't get a team. And also, it's just silly. I know he has no idea what he's talking about. And, if he were more self-aware, he'd be embarrassed by those type of statements. But he's not. So there's no engaging with it. Football's not getting too soft. If anything, we need that we make progress so we don't see any more tragedies and we don't have more people suffering later in life.
People have called you the most dangerous man in football for walking away from the game after just one season, for the reasons that you did it. Do you agree with that? Are you a dangerous man, or is there someone else you think is more dangerous to the future of the game?
I don't agree with that. I think that was taken from an article written a couple of years ago, and they write headlines to get people to click on the link or to read the story. So that's not the way I feel. I think I'm in a really great position to do some good, and I've worked for the past couple of years in a variety of realms where I think made maybe not the game better, but certainly the lives of people who've played and are playing and will play better. So I don't promote that or agree with it, but you can't control what people write.
You said that you are unafraid to walk away from football because you have other interests. So I'm curious, where have you focused your time since retiring, aside from talking today on a panel at the Powering Precision Health Conference?
Well, I was a little naive to how white hot this topic was when I walked away 2 years ago. So was cast into a role doing some advocacy and transitioning more into mental health, and started a company this past summer integrating meditation and mindfulness into athletics. So just finished a great pilot study at the University of Wisconsin, and are beginning to integrate that work into athletic departments and to athletics at all levels. So couldn't have been prepared but it's been really interesting and redeeming.
Okay, well, looking forward to hearing more about that new endeavor. In the meantime, Chris is at the Powering Precision Health 2017 conference, the nation's first precision health summit designed to be the premier forum for world-leading researchers and clinicians. It is happening today and tomorrow at the historic Charles Hotel in Harvard Square. Chris Borland, really appreciate your time, and have fun. Good luck today at that conference.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Chris. Hope to talk to you again soon. That's going to do it for this episode of SI Now. Of course, we will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. But until then, stick with SI.com for all the latest news and headlines, and follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. That's where you can see clips from today's show. See you tomorrow.